Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Kristen and I would like to share with you the pens and inks that I'll be using for February 2024. I've been inspired by Simone to take a look at some of the guidelines that I use when deciding on the pens and inks for each month. So in 2023, I would select Diamond Inkvent inks. I would select some inks from my bottled ink collection, and I would also select some samples from the most recent Inkflight subscription boxes. After taking a look at my fountain pen collection and realizing how many fountain pens I bought last year and how many I have total right now, I had to figure out how I was going to be able to use all of my fountain pens at least once, hopefully twice, for my favorites in the year 2024. And I also want to make sure that I'm using all of my bottled inks this year as well. So at least the ones that I've never used or the ones that I don't remember how they perform in my fountain pens, I am really going to make a conscious effort to use those inks and make a conscious effort to use every pen in my collection this year. So after having used everything between the months of February and November, by December this year, I will have a better understanding, a better idea of the pens and inks that will remain in my collection and the ones that I will need to donate, sell, or retire. Okay, so these are the fountain pens that I'm going to be using for February 2024. So in this lineup, I have 2 fountain pens filled with bottled inks. I have 2 fountain pens filled with Diamine 2023 Inkvent inks. I have 2 additional pens that I'm going to use for a diagnostic test for one of the more troublesome Diamine Inkvent colors. I want to see which of these 2 pens will actually perform better with a wet scented ink. Within this collection, I've got 4 new fountain pens that I'll be testing out for the first time. I've also got a fountain pen filled with a December 2023 Inkflight sample. And last, I've got an additional fountain pen with an ink that I just really want to try this month. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to be testing out these pen and ink pairings on several different papers. I've got Tomoe River paper, Midori paper, Cosmo Air Light paper, Bank paper, and Iroful paper. I'll also be testing out these pairings on an Oasis notebook and a Usari notebook. Okay, so let's get started on Tomoe River paper. First up, I've got the Esterbrook Model J. It has a Techo nib, and this one is inked up with Diamine Walnut. I like how this pen feels. I like this color. This is a nice color. Okay. And it's a nice, smooth. Oh, this feels good. It looks good. Look at that. I love the soft brown. This brown is nice. I'm a sucker for browns, and so this really fits the bill. I love the color. That match is really nice. That's a really good match. This is my Leonardo Momento Zero Grande 2.0 in the Primary Manipulation 1 by Jonathan Brooks, and it has a matte finish. It's got a fine steel nib. This pen is inked up with Tasya Kurocha. Oh, this is gorgeous. I love my browns. Oh, that's nice. Am I just going to be saying that's nice over and over and over again? I like that I can tell that Diamine Walnut is brown. Tasya Kurocha is quite dark. I'm willing to keep going with that one because it performs well so far. I mean, I've only written a handful of words, but it feels really nice. Okay, so this is my Kara's Vertex fountain pen. The resin is called Small Batch 2023-001. This has an aluminum section. The nib is a titanium extra fine nib. This one is inked up with Pannonia Ink Laboratory S11. It's that ink color that I'm not too sure about, but it matches this color right here so very well. I just had to put it in this pen. This is such a weird color. It is such a weird color. I don't know how long I'm going to last with this one because the color is just so strange to me. I feel like this is already kind of repelling me just a tad bit, but I'm really curious about writing a full page of words with this to see if I'll warm up to a color like this or if my first impressions are actually quite accurate. We'll see at the end of the month. And this titanium nib is actually really nice. It feels bouncy but sturdy, and there's quite a bit of feedback to it, and I am intrigued. This is my Asveen V126 in matte blue finish. It's got a medium nib, and I've inked this one up with Diamine Fortune's Gold. Let me go ahead and open this up. Kind of nice. It seems like the ink is a little bit dry in comparison to the previous ink that I used in here. The last ink I used in this Asveen fountain pen was Leonardo Blue, I believe, and it was such a beautiful combination. It was nice and juicy and lubricated and everything. There is less lubrication here, and so it's got me wondering how easy is it going to be to write with this ink in this pen long term. But the combination so far, it's really nice. I like seeing this yellow come out of the blue fountain pen with gold trim. All right, so this is my Pelikan 140 green stripes with a fine nib. It is inked up with Troublemaker Inks Kelp Tea, one of the bottled inks in my collection. So it's been so long since I've used Kelp Tea that I don't really remember how it looks or performs in a fountain pen. Let's check it out. Ooh. Okay, this is a juicy pen. There is so much ink coming out of this pen, and I love it. Oh, and oh, yeah. So I'm upset that I haven't used this ink in so long. It dries down to like this brownish color, so it goes on pretty green, but there is a brown or a pinkish brown color that appears as the ink dries or after the ink dries. And so I am so excited about this one. And the fact that I put it in this juicy, flexible Pelikan nib. Next, we've got my Pelikan. This is not a Pelikan. Next, we've got my Sailor Pro Gear Slim Mini Nuts with a medium nib. And this one is inked up with Ink Journal's mix of the Platinum Mix Free inks. And Ink Journal has called this ink Majestic Spruce. It's from the December 2023 ink flight box. This is really nice. Oh, I like it. Even though it's not a 100% match between the colors in the pen and the ink color, I like it. It gives like this freshness to such a muted green color. So I like that. Next up is a new to me fountain pen. I received this fountain pen as a Christmas gift in 2023. And I've got this one inked up with the Pannonia Ink Laboratory Z15 from November 2023. Oh, ooh, okay. All right, let me wipe this off. Since this is my first time inking this one up, I don't know if this was an issue that happened because I might have jostled the pen or the case, or if there's something going on with the pen itself. So I'll have to keep a close watch on this pen. Ooh. Hold on a minute. There is some, I think there are misaligned tines on this one. Hold on a moment. I'll take a look at this thing. Ooh, yeah. All right, so the tines on this fountain pen were misaligned. They were basically like this. So I did my best to get them back at least within working distance of each other. So let's see how it writes now that I have adjusted the tines. Pro Gear Slim. It's a little bit better, but there's still a little bit of misalignment that I've got to work through. I'll do that a bit later. Sailor Pro Gear Slim Dragon Palace. That's a gorgeous ink color. I like it. Just gotta work on the nib. This is, I'm so excited, can't you tell? This is the Sailor 1911 large in maroon. It's got an extra fine nib. This is my first ever Japanese extra fine nib. This is the first one that I've owned. Not the first I've tried, but the first in my collection. This fountain pen is inked up with Tasya Sabimidori. Oh. It is so smooth and so lubricated with this ink in here too. This is beautiful. This is really gorgeous. I don't know how much of the sheen I'm going to see. I don't know how much of the additional colors I'm going to see because of the fact that this nib is so fine. But the way that it's performing right now, it feels really good. And it looks really good. I actually really like that shade of blue. But I know it's going to dry down to a less saturated color. It's looking real good so far as it dries. Let me get you a little bit closer so you can see. That's really bright. I'm so sorry, y'all. Is that better? That's probably a bit better. This is the Twisby Diamond 580 AL in silver. It's got a fine nib, and I've got this one inked up with my second bottled ink for the month, which is Diamine Indigo. Oh. There we go. The ink color looks really nice, but the fact that it hard started up here has got me a little bit nervous. So I wonder if it's a dry ink or if there's something going on with the pen. I'm not sure just yet, but I'll keep an eye on that one as well. So I do see just a tad bit of sheen with the Tasya Sabimidori, and I kind of like it. This is another new fountain pen, the Drevna Pisana Orion fountain pen in the wind finish. It's got a medium nib, and it's inked up with Diamine Sparkling Shadows. This is a shimmer ink, so I'm going to have to agitate this a bit. The cartridge is quite small, so I can't always trust that I'm fully agitating the ink so that the shimmer is reincorporated. So we'll see how long this fountain pen lasts this month. It might not last very long at all. It feels like the writing experience is probably going to be really inconsistent. Yeah, I'll have to keep this one. I have to keep my eye on this one. There are quite a few fountain pens that I'm just going to have to figure out whether or not I need to empty them before the end of the month. Oh, I smell it before I even... This is the Platinum 3776 Century, and it has a soft fine nib. It's inked up with Diamine Sweet Dreams. Diamine Sweet Dreams was one of the 2 scented inks from the 2023 Diamine Inkvent calendar. This scented ink is super wet, and it feathered on just about every paper that I used. I have this one inked up in 2 different fountain pens, in this one and in the final one, my Kaweco AL Sport, to see which fountain pen is going to give Sweet Dreams its best chance on all of my papers. This is kind of nice. So I actually really do like the fragrance of Diamine Sweet Dreams. It smells like bubblegum or cotton candy or something. And it looks almost neon pink. I kind of like it. It's like a soft neon pink. And I like how it looks coming from this lovely white fountain pen. It feels really nice and lubricated coming out of the pen as well. And there is no feathering. Yay! I have hope. And so the second fountain pen that I will be using with Diamine Sweet Dreams is my Kaweco AL Sport. It has a fine nib, and it is typically a dry writer. So I'm hoping with a super wet ink that I will have a great writing experience with this pen. Look at the difference in these 2 fountain pens. Diamine Sweet Dreams looks much darker and more saturated coming from the Platinum 3776 Century. And it seems like with the Kaweco AL Sport, with this wider nib, it seems like it was spreading out the ink just a tad bit more. It's not that it's laying down more ink than the soft fine. It looks like it's using just about the same amount of ink and creating a broader line with that same amount of ink. So it looks a little bit more translucent on the page. It looks like a much softer pink. These are the inks for the month. So let's take a look at it a little bit closer. Yeah. So it looks like Sweet Dreams does well in both of these fountain pens. That is great news. Yay. Now that I've done this on Tomoe River, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on my additional papers and in my 2 extra notebooks, and I will be back to do some comparisons. It gets rid of the Sailor feedback, but it writes properly now. Oh my goodness. Really, just looking at the softness of these colors, I live in the world of muted colors. I do like the palette. So I've got like my warm earth tones here, but then still like this little pop of niceness down here at the very bottom. Let me get this out of the way so you can see it all. But yeah, that little pop of pink down there. The Tomoe River paper was the first one that I started out with. So these were my first writing samples that I did with each fountain pen. And this was the next one. So I then did the bank paper, then Cosmo Air Light, then the Korean Midori paper, and then finally Iroful paper. And then after these, I wrote the same thing in 2 notebooks. So from the first sheet to this 5th sheet, there were some, I guess, kinks that I worked out, specifically with Diamine Sparkling Shadows. In the Drevna Pisana fountain pen, you'll see down here that I had a lot of trouble trying to get this fountain pen to write. But after this first attempt, it got a little bit better and a little bit better and better and better until I got this beautiful writing sample right here. So yes, it is a nice gray ink with this beautiful golden shimmer. It felt really nice to write with it. So I was a little bit worried at first right here, but it was very reliable by the time I got to Iroful paper. And the same thing with Diamine Indigo. I had some trouble trying to get the TWSBI Diamond 580 to write on the Tomoe River paper, but it was much more reliable after starting it here. I'm going to give these pens, the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it just needed some prompting. So I worked out all the kinks on this Tomoe River paper, but here and here, everything went well. The only thing that did not get better and better was the Asvine V126. When I got to the bank paper, you can see that there definitely were some hard starts, and it didn't have anything to do with the fountain pen. I believe it is the ink that just has some trouble grabbing onto the super smooth, super slick papers. So this is the smoothest out of all 5 of these papers. So there really is not much texture for this ink to grab a hold of. So it is understandable that there was a little bit of skipping going on this paper. Some of these fountain pens, it was just a little bit difficult trying to get some of them to write whenever there was an excessive amount of drag. So on the Cosmo Air Light paper, Iroful paper, and even sometimes on Midori paper, it was a little difficult to be able to form some of these more round shapes. My nib actually got stuck trying to write the E in Diamine on both of these papers. This is Cosmo Air Light paper, and this is Midori paper. So going from the top, we have Diamine Walnut, which is a lovely brown. I really like how it looks on all of the papers, and I can tell by looking at the bank paper and the Midori paper that this walnut ink is like a cooler, less saturated brown than Tasya Kurocha. Tasya Kurocha, I can see that this is more of a reddish brown if I look at it on the bank paper, but it looks almost black, very near black on Iroful paper. As far as their performance goes, these two pens, the Esterbrook Model J and the Leonardo Momento Zero Grande 2.0, they perform very well across all papers. So I'm really happy about that because I love my brown inks. Pannonia Ink Laboratory S11. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I really like the way that it looks peach on Iroful paper and on the Cosmo Air Light paper. Now this yellowish orange thing that it's got going on Midori and on the bank paper, I'm not too crazy about that shade of orange. It looks strange to me. I guess the verdict is still out on how well I'm going to really enjoy using this pen and ink combination. I do know that at this point, this is not an ink that I'm going to purchase because I'm not really crazy about this ink across papers. In order for me to want to purchase an ink, I have to love it across all papers. I'm really just going to be using this pen and ink pairing just to get to know this fountain pen a little bit better. This titanium nib, this extra fine titanium nib is really nice and bouncy, but also sturdy at the same time. And it has some very specific, very strange drag going on with some of these papers. Towards the very beginning, it felt like I wasn't really sure about like how much to push this pen. I wasn't sure how to respond to the resistance that I was experiencing here. But then as I went on, it became a little bit more easy to write with this and respond to the way that it bounces and the way that it drags across the paper. I'm looking forward to getting to know it a little bit better. I talked about Diamond Fortune's Gold, which actually looks warmer on Midori paper and the bank paper. It's more of a greenish gold on the other three papers. Troublemaker Inks Kelp Tea. I like it. I really do enjoy the color of Troublemaker Inks Kelp Tea. And I'm glad that I have a full bottle of this ink because it's just, I like it on all of these papers, even though it looks pretty unique on each of these papers. So Kelp Tea on the bank paper it has like a little greenish tint to it. And on Midori, it's more of a peachy, pink, yellowish color. Like I see all of these colors. I see peach, I see pink, I see yellow, I see green here. Over here on Cosmo Air Light paper and Tomoe River paper, it's a cooler tone, kind of taupey color. Yeah, it looks a little taupe here. But then on Iroful paper, it's more of it's almost like a warm gray color, which is so cool. So here we have it on the cream Midori paper. All those individual colors that I see combine to make this ink look almost brown, like a pinkish brown color on Midori paper. It looks a bit more green on the bank paper. So let's compare the two. So that brown versus a greenish color. I think that's so cool how inks just change across papers, or some inks change across papers, and others maybe just a little bit, but not so much. And one of those inks that doesn't change so much is the Ink Journal Majestic Spruce. So it looks more like a spring green on the Midori paper and the bank paper, and it's a bit cooler on Iroful, Cosmo Air Light, and Tomoe River paper. It's okay. It looks like a really nice, solid green ink. I'm not really wowed by the green, but it's a nice green. Pannonia Ink Laboratory Z15. I really like how desaturated this green ink looks. This was in my new Sailor Pro Gear Dragon Palace. This has a medium fine nib. So I did some adjustments on the tines and it felt a little bit better, but I was still feeling quite a bit of but I was still feeling quite a bit of scratchiness between the tines. So the inside of each tine, it was very rough, very scratchy. So I did a little bit of work on some fine grit sandpaper that I purchased from Goulet Pens a while ago. And that definitely improved my writing experience, but I still need to get between those two tines to get to address the roughness between them so that it is a fully pleasant experience. Unfortunately, some of that Sailor feedback did get eliminated while I was eliminating some of the scratchiness, but I would rather have a well-functioning fountain pen than the Sailor feedback in a fountain pen that I just couldn't stand using. So I'll be working on that just a little bit more to get it exactly the way that I want it, then it will be good. So of course it looks warmer on the cream Midori paper. I really love the cool toned sage green color on Iroful paper. Tassia Sabi Midori is so cool. It's really nice. So it has like this, I don't even know what shade of blue this is. It's like a green leaning blue, but it's still like a solid blue color with a red sheen to it, but it looks teal here on the cream Tomoe River paper. I love both versions, and I love it in this maroon fountain pen. To have something like this come out of this maroon pen, it just looks and feels so good. And the extra fine Japanese nib, this is perfect. It was so good, so pleasant. I enjoyed it every time I picked up that fountain pen. There was nothing wrong with it. It was so nice and lubricated, but there was still a little bit of that sailor feedback. It was a great experience. I really enjoyed using it no matter what paper it was on. It does look a little thin here on Tomoe River paper, and I really do enjoy the look of it here on Iroful, but the writing experience was great across all papers. Diamond Indigo was an interesting surprise. I didn't even realize from the beginning that when I write with it, as the ink goes down wet on the paper, it is a very deep saturated blue, but then it dries down to a less saturated, almost gray blue here. And so this is pretty much the color that you'll see across these 4 papers, although it looks a bit softer here on the cream paper. But on Iroful paper, it actually retains some of that deepness and some of that saturation. Diamond Sparkling Shadows, I was worried here, but by the time I got here to Iroful paper, all my worries had gone away. I actually really like the feedback on this nib as well. So this is a Bach medium nib, I believe, and it feels really good. Diamond Sweet Dreams, it's like a fun pink color. I'm actually surprised that I enjoyed using such a bright, such a shocking pink, and I didn't even think that this pink would be so bright and soft at the same time. I didn't think that it would look like this coming from a fountain pen nib. I thought it would be much more saturated and a deeper magenta color, but this is like bright pink. It smells good. It is one of the scented inks, and so as soon as I uncapped the Platinum 3776 Century, I could smell the bubblegum. I could smell the cotton candy. If you do not like that, stay away from the ink. This ink performed flawlessly on all 5 of these papers, which is a relief because it feathered terribly on all of my papers back in December. So coming out of a dry nib, it looks like this is the best way to go. Looking at both the Platinum 3776 and the Kaweco AL Sport, I'm really starting to like the ink. Now in the Platinum, it is much more crisp and a deeper or punchier pink color than it is coming from the Kaweco AL Sport. It looks softer because this nib is a little bit wider and it spreads the ink much more thinly as it glides along the paper. What's the word? It looks a bit more translucent. So you'll see that the pinks look a little bit softer, a little bit lighter, a little more pastel coming from the Kaweco AL Sport than they do coming out of the Platinum 3776. So that is all 5 papers. Now let's take a look at the inks in the Usari notebook and my Oasis notebook. Usari notebook is on the right, and then the Oasis notebook is on the left with the cream paper. So looking at Diamond Walnut, especially with these swatches, I'm so glad that I did the swatches in these notebooks so that I can really get a better understanding, a better idea of what these colors look like next to each other. Diamond Walnut is like that deeper desaturated brown, and Kurocha is a warmer, more reddish, more saturated brown, and I really enjoy both of those inks. Pannonia Ink Laboratory S11 looks orange on both papers, so I'm not too crazy about it. But the Kara's Vertex, the pen for this ink, performed very well on both of these papers. Diamond Fortune's Gold. Yeah. So see that shimmer. Yeah, look at that shimmer. Okay, so Diamond Fortune's Gold looks really nice on both of these papers. It's a bit cooler on the white paper as expected because this cream paper warms it up just a little bit more. Troublemaker Inks Kelp Tea looks slightly warmer on the Oasis paper, but the actual colors that I'm seeing in the ink are pretty consistent across both papers. Ink Journal Majestic Spruce is warmer here on the cream paper. And the same thing here for the Pannonia Ink Laboratory Z15. It's warmer here on the cream paper. So the performance of these fountain pens across papers is pretty consistent because they're pretty similar in terms of smoothness. So the Tassia Sabi Midori looks warmer here. The same thing with Diamond Indigo. It's cooler here, warmer there. Diamond Sparkling Shadows. Good feedback. Really nice writing experience on both papers. The cream paper seemed to bring out the gold shimmer a little bit better than the white paper. I don't know. I don't know if it's the way that I wrote it or if I actually really do prefer the look of Diamond Sweet Dreams on this cream paper. It performed pretty well. Oh. In the Usari notebook, there is some light, very subtle feathering of Diamond Sweet Dreams. And you'd have to really be looking for it. So those areas where there was heavier ink pooling, where it takes a little bit longer for this ink to dry. So the I in Diamond, actually the other I in Diamond as well. This F in San Francisco, not San Francisco. This F in the soft fine. So those areas where there's just a tad bit more ink, the edges look a little bit more rugged than they should. All of these other inks, you'll see that they have smooth, very nice borders. But here, where it took a little bit longer for this ink to dry, it actually feathered just a little bit. But if you're not really looking for it, you can't really tell that the ink feathered. All right, so that is it. I really like these colors. They're not like these super bright, super saturated in your face colors, but they're nice and soft and light, but still warm and grounded here. I'm looking forward to writing with every single one of these pens. I'm a little bit iffy here, but everything else is like really good. I'm a little bit iffy here, and if I can work this out, you know, this might be the only thing that I may or may not enjoy. I'm ready to start writing, journaling, and doing all the things with these pens this month. And the one I am most excited about is the Sailor 1911 Large Maroon. All right, so I think that is it. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the pens and inks that I selected for this month. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. Let me know what you think about these pens and what you're excited to use for the month of February. I'd love to hear from you. And until the next video, I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.